Life cycle of a honeybee. Is a bee an animal? Yes, bees are animals in that bees, like all invertebrates, are part of the animal kingdom. Is a bee an insect? Yes, a bee is an insect. An insect is an invertebrate animal without an internal backbone. All insects have a body in three parts: a head, thorax, and abdomen, a pair of antennae, three pairs of jointed legs, and compound eyes. A bee has all these featured and is an insect. You can contrast this with, say, a spider, which is not an insect. Is a bee a type of fly? No, although bees and flies are insects, flies belong to the insect order Diptera. Flies have one pair of wings, bees have two. Their mouth parts are for piercing or sucking. As I explained above, bees belong in the insect order Hymenoptera. Today we will look at the humble bee, but what we will find is something astonishing. What you see here are insects not just flying about a farmer's field. The bees, like other insects, need to eat and drink to live, but also to feed their offspring. Incidentally, all the bees you see here are females. How do I know this? I'll let you into that secret later in the video. Once the girls have filled up with nectar and pollen, they fly back to their hive. How long have bees been flying about on this earth? Would you believe 150 million years? This bee was trapped in amber, that tree sap which over millions of years protected it. Interestingly, jewellery is made from amber, and sometimes one can find things trapped inside it. As we go into a hive, we see many different things, and as beekeepers we must be able to spot them all. Firstly, we must see lots of bees. Is there lots of honey? Is there lots of pollen? Do we see the eggs that the queen has laid? Are they growing well? Is there new bees being born? Is there male bees? We call them drones, and sometimes if we are lucky, we see the queen. She's very hard to spot in amounts of 30 to 60,000 bees. A hive is made of many parts. Here we see the beekeeper taking off what we would call a super. This contains the honey. We never find eggs or the queen in here because we place a piece of equipment over the main chamber, which we call the brood box. This acts as a fence, and it keeps the queen in the bottom box where we want her. She can't get through because she's a little bigger than the other bees, which are her daughters and sons. The question the beekeeper is asking themselves whilst looking in this hive is everything looking healthy? Bees do a great job of looking after themselves. They've been doing it for millions of years. What you see here is worker brood. Under each one of these little hexagonal caps is a female bee ready to be born now or in the next few days. In what looks like empty cells, maybe eggs or larvae being fed by all the worker bees around. On one of those frames the beekeeper is holding can contain 3,500 to 4,000 cells, and we have 11 frames in each brood box. If we do the math, that's about 44,000 cells. Each is a perfect hexagonal, and the worker bees have made every one of them from wax that they produce from their own body. We go from frame to frame checking everything, ever hopeful to see the queen, but we always see evidence of her and where she's been in the eggs she lays. How many eggs can she lay in one day? I'll answer that question shortly. Here we find a different kind of cell. This is a drone cell, and it only contains male bees. They have only one job to do. Again, I'll explain shortly. In a normal healthy hive, there are not many drones, probably up to 3,000. If we were to see many drones or drone cells on a frame in the hive, it might indicate a problem. Drones don't have a dad, but have a grandfather. How could that be possible? Again, I'll explain shortly. Now here is a cell we don't want to find. It's a queen cell. Inside this cell is a queen larva. The workers, the queen's daughters, have built this because they want to swarm and fly away to a new home. We have 3 different types of bees in a hive. The first is the worker. We will look at her in more detail. Despite the fact that all worker bees are female, most of the time they can't lay eggs. The queen lays the eggs, which hatch in individual cells after 3 days. The worker larvae are fed by her sister's royal jelly for 2.5 days, followed by a mix of pollen and honey for 2.5 days. Afterwards, they are sealed in their cells for 13 days, during which they spin a cocoon and develop into an adult. The entire process takes 21 days, approximately. She's called a worker for that very reason. She never stops. From the day she emerges from her cell, she has duties to perform. In days 1 to 2, she cleans the empty cells around her where the other new bees have just hatched, getting it ready for the queen to lay more eggs. Days 3 to 5, she feeds the older larvae. Days 6 to 11, she feeds the youngest larvae. Days 12 to 17, she produces wax from her abdomen, builds comb, carries food from worker bees that have been outside the hive collecting food, and undertaker duties. Days 18 to 21, she guards the front of the hive from enemies, example, wasps. Days 22 plus, her true flying begins, going to and fro collecting pollen and nectar to feed her sisters in the hive. On average, she lives for 5 to 6 weeks in the summer. During the winter months, a worker may live up to 6 months in order to help sustain the hive through the cold weather and raise new workers for the spring and summer. A colony will not survive without so many of worker bees, but the hours of effort take their toll. A worker typically dies from exhaustion or burnout, and its body stops functioning from all the hard work. For example, their wing muscles will give out at about 500 miles of flight distance.
A drone bee is a male honeybee. Unlike the female worker bee, drones do not have a stinger and gather neither nectar nor pollen. A drone's primary role is to mate with an unfertilized queen. We said earlier drones don't have a dad but have a grandfather. I'll try and explain. Drones are born from unfertilized eggs and only contain 16 chromosomes. Every other bee has 32 chromosomes because they come from fertilized eggs laid by the queen. The drone only has the chromosomes from his mother because of the unfertilized egg. She comes from a fertilized egg and has 32 chromosomes, 16 from her mother and 16 from her father, the drone's grandfather. Hence, he has no father but has a grandfather. On the face of it, drones have a great life. Or you may think they do. They are fed and cleaned by their sisters. They don't have to collect pollen or nectar. Occasionally, they are used to cool down the hive by fanning their wings when the hive becomes too hot. Unfortunately, the life of a drone comes to an unceremonious end round about September, early October, when his sisters kick him out the hive. He's no longer needed. His duties of fertilization are not required, probably until next year. So all the drones, all the male bees in the hive, all die.
The queen bee plays a vital role in the hive because she is the only female with fully developed ovaries. The queen's two primary purposes are to produce chemical scents that help regulate the unity of the colony and to lay lots of eggs. Any fertilized egg has the potential to become a queen. Diet in the larval stage determines whether the bee will develop into a queen or a worker. All bee larvae are fed some royal jelly for the first few days after hatching. Only queen larvae are fed the jelly exclusively. She hatches from her cell on her own. As you can see from this photo where she has chewed her way out, almost like opening a tin of food. The average lifespan of a queen is 3 to 5 years, if the beekeeper lets her. She starts her life as a normal egg laid by a queen, but for many reasons her daughters want a new queen. Maybe the original queen is too old and she's not laying enough eggs, or more than likely the hive wants to swarm. She's not the boss. Her role in the hive is just to lay eggs every day of her life, almost 2,000 every single day. That's about 1 every 43 seconds. Her daughters clean and feed her. One important role is that she smells good. What I mean is she gives off a smell called pheromones. It's a very important substance within a hive. It keeps all the bees working together. If the queen dies or leaves the hive for any reason, The remaining bees become very unsettled. This has just been a brief overview on the life cycle of the honeybee. You can find out more from your local Beekeepers Association. My association is New Battle Beekeepers. Don't hesitate to visit us.